Hello, and welcome to Songwriters Spotlight, the Western Mass Songwriters Collaborative Series. I'm Dr. Dan, your host of the show, where we feature Western Mass songwriters who perform their original songs and talk about the art of songwriting. Stay tuned to explore more about music and the tunesmithing that creates it. Our guest in this episode is Billy Moon, a storyteller with music. He uses his voice, guitar, and lyrics to weave tales of life and living. This is Billy Moon.
All right, this is a song called The Chair, and it's about exactly what it sounds like it's about. Three, two, one. Me close enough, I guess, to the scene of that damn crime. I could see her lying there, a halo, all that blood just for a dime. But time, it ain't on my side. I felt like death and he felt like me. A martyr out on bended knee. Minding my own, such a quiet life and a tired soul. Mama kept telling me to confess, but I professed my innocence. Just that all that evidence would show. Lord, ain't that just how it goes? Carve the days into the wall, where the bells rang I sang, the clarion call, and wishing I could hang me, an innocent man. Viewing room should have assumed they're just like me. So they put the cloth over my eyes. I hear myself begging, just like her. As the straps go around my thighs, Lord, I plead my case one last time. 'Cause what's the harm, Lord, in one more life? All right, this is one of my happier tunes. This is called All I Ever Wanted. Well, I'm born across the waves on a cold November day, when the light don't seem so bright anymore. When all is said and done, I'll be the last to up and run. I've done my time just dead aside from the shore. The day's goddamn bleak, I won't turn the other cheek. The sun's on the edge of the world. Balance like the beam, the breath turns into steam. We might be gone one day for sure, but all I ever wanted was her. Beat down like a dog, howling at the guy. Take these bones away to golden lands. When a soul's born to lose, the only way to change a tune is switch that silhouette to a two-piece match. Though today is goddamn bleak, I won't turn the other cheek. The sun's on the edge of the world. Balance like the beam, yeah, breath turns into steam. Might be gone one day for sure, but all I ever wanted was a whisper in my ear, living easy, thinking clear, a hand to hold when the time is near. Don't want it anymore as you look in from the door. That little light on, that'll lead me back to shore. Back to shore. Back for sure. Back for sure. This song's about growing up. It's called Triumph Bonneville. It's 12 years old, you're laying in your bedroom, staring up at the ceiling stars again, and dreaming of a crowd spread out before you. Chant your name, yell and play it again. Now you're 16 and you're walking through a party, watching as your friends all grow, and deep down you know you won't know them forever. After all, that's just how these things go. Then one day you wake up on a sofa, with a migraine pounding Morse code through your head. The party's been over quite a while now. The dream's replaced with memories. your heroes are all gone, you're still here. Used to be easy, the future seemed clearer. Out in the distance at the end of the drive. And now it's all darker and just a bit colder. It's hard to dream when you're trying to survive. And sure, life might be easier when you're older, when you learn somehow to live with the fear. The world is getting grayer by the hour, the days are getting longer every year. And I've never seen colors well or clearly. Seems some nerve somewhere up here must be lost. But the funny thing with colors and perception, you don't know what you missed till you know it's lost. Sometimes the only living option, despite how the world's changing me, to pass the fire to someone younger, maybe a bit stronger than you and I could ever hope to be. So take, if you will, our borrowed history, leave it all out there on the floor, and rage against the dying of the light that wavers in you, and remember all the dreams worth fighting for. At 12 years old, you're laying in your bedroom, staring up at the ceiling, stars again, dreaming of a crowd spread out before you. They chant your name, yelling, play it again. It's called The Weapon. Sometimes when I don't quite fit with every steadfast plan you made, there may be some fire and there may be fire, 'cause love ain't ever gonna fade. This hellbound train should give up my ghost like steam to the cold night air. Smile when you feel the wind tassel your hair, even if I ain't there, I'm there. Talk about death in the casual sense that holds a bony grip on our soul. Between you and I, it's a terrible fright. It's time to be a fraction of. So whoever's claimed to look past the stage, the scrim to the other side, and swears that they've seen some quiet reprieve, you bet your ass that they lie. This hellbound train should give up my ghost like steam to the cold night air. Smile when you feel the wind tassel your hair, no, even if I ain't there, I'm there. Time is a weapon ready to name the aimless, the crooked, unkind. But it's Catholic as well with a lowercase c, roulette with a lack of design. It ain't fair, but too often the good wander west without solace, vindication, or grace. The wicked live on to embezzle and con, fire themselves into space. We all end up paying the toll. One way or another, we're playing a cover of a song that's already been sold. It's a finger on the scales where we're weighing the wrath wrought and keen and yell. We're spearing our side, well, sure as hell fight, 'cause our love is a weapon as well. There may be some times when I don't quite fit every steadfast plan you made. There may be some fire and there may be the flood, but our love is never gonna fade. Alright, it's called 65 Chevy, and I wrote it, Jesus, a long time ago. I recently reworked it a little bit, so. Put it on the back burner. Keep it in the back with a highball glass. Let it linger, that stinger, like that old folk singer, drinking at a table dressed in black. And your 18th birthday fell on a Monday, while your mom was sitting by the pool, nervous and anxious, waiting for you to come on home. Let me know. And that 65 Chevy, you crashed on the highway while your mom was sitting by the phone, nervous and anxious, waiting for you to come on home. Let me know. said you'd never leave her. When she broke your heart, you spoke. You said life is just a dating game, a waiting game, a mating game. But damn, I wish that it all would end. I could screw her every day, but she would never stay. I think I'd be better off dead. We are gold. We are all growing old. We are calm and repose, bleeding in the snow. Damn cold knuckles and frost between our toes. We are new and we are used, and used to the abuse. We are all gold, and I am too. This is a song called Acheron, which is the name of it's another name for the river Styx, but this one's an actual river that actually exists in Greece. Turns in violent shame. The trees are green that house the pain. The tall grass static spotting waned, while the moon falls down again. I drank my share from Shakedown Street. I've hung my head and claimed defeat, like victory from the maw of man. The moon danced down again. So what rough beast am I were told to sound sure way. There's a bluebird in my heart, it seems. He's Ophelia singing away down the stream. He sung his wrath, but the wrath won't end. The moon sinks down again. An anvil heart is forged in fire, but the softer center I aspire. 'Cause whatever God will ever hand, that made me also made the lamb. So the moon begins to rise against the sun in the haze, while the harlequins they dance, they're caught beneath a blood red rain. And the moon won't set again. times ain't drawn in white and black. Pick up the shades along the track. Some color we got, some we lack, and we all got things we can't take back. So Orpheus on the road from hell, gotta trust all we love will travel well. The engine's good, the chain ain't slack. Keep your eyes on the road, don't look back. Keep your eyes on the road, don't look back. God no mirrors, just black and steel. 'Cause all highway is ahead of the wheel. No matter what force tries to wrest control, I'm the only driver of my soul. River turns in violent shame. My wife likes to call this my torch song. It's called Barn Raising. My heart is a hammer, been hammering for days, beating away at the walls in the way, just hoping for something to make better sense. It ain't too much, but some hopeful defense. And through this twist, it's so precared, I'll take my name and a few regrets crawling up these walls I made. My heart is a hammer, been hammering away. Bang, bang, there goes again, singing so tell me bones and skin. And bang, bang, I'm trying then to keep tucking my tail back home. I keep tucking my tail back home. My heart is a hammer, blunt and on scale. It's violence unkind, as if that's what I will. But even old dogs can learn new tricks, baptized in masonry, dust and bricks. I wreck this ship, I raise a goddamn cane. I ride and rave at the cage that I frame, the bridges I broken, the towers I spell. My heart is a hammer, it breaks to rebuild. My heart is a hammer, swings through the veil, builds up the framework, spikes through the rail. The floorboard's familiar, this memory of stone, but this time I ain't really building alone. The prison is empty, the prisoner's freed. The violence is golden, but will slowly recede. Foundation is solid, it's too tough to fail. My heart is a hammer, and every day is a nail. Every day is a nail. Bang, bang. hammering for days, beating away at the walls and the way. Foundation is solid, it's too tough to fail. My heart is a hammer, and every day is a nail.
Billy, that was a great set. I enjoyed the heck out of it.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
So the guitar, the vocals, the lyrics, the feelings, and so on were just impeccable. Really, really nice.
Thank you. It means a lot.
Yeah.
And thank you for having me. It was a blast. It was a fun experience. Haven't done it in a while. So.
Great, great. So when did you launch this songwriting career?
I guess about 2 decades ago, almost. I started writing when I was around 12 or 13. Started playing out when I was around 14, and started playing at Sam's Pizza in Northampton when they were still doing open mics there with Eva Capelli and Mark Firehammer, I think was the other guy who hosted it, and just a general blast. And that kind of got me started on writing, and then I kind of bounced around between different genres for a while. I was in a metal band, I was in a couple punk bands, and now I'm back to my roots, I guess, so to speak.
Yeah. So what motivated you? What was the thing that got you going?
Originally or recently? More recently?
Both.
Okay. Originally, my parents took me to see Slade Cleaves at the Iron Horse, and he was the first concert I ever went to, and the song stuck with me, the music stuck with me, and it just kind of spiraled out of control from there, so to speak. And I just had the pleasure of seeing Slade recently play at the Parlor Room, and it was cool having everything come full circle again, and yeah.
Nice. And more recently?
And more recently, I mean, getting back into it was tough because I was living in New York and I was working at a music store. And I don't know if you've ever worked at a music store, but when you work at a music store, sometimes, especially when it's a big multinational corporation music store, it can be a little bit tough to feel driven to go out and perform after sitting and, listening to music all day and being around all the guitars all day. Sometimes it can be a little much, for lack of a better word. And yeah, I think I just fell off of playing music while I was living there. And then once COVID hit, me and my wife moved back here, and I just immediately went back to it. I immediately had songs again. I had my writer's block was gone, and I was ready to rock. So
what motivates you to write?
That's a great question. I think that when it comes down to it, everybody has a story, and so I think a big motivation is just telling stories, whether or not it's my story, whether or not it's someone else's story, whether or not it's a completely fictional story that I made up and I'm telling it like it's truth, whether or not it's a completely fictional story that I made up and I'm not telling it as truth. I think that when it comes down to it, everybody is a story upon a story upon a story upon a story, and I think that they need to be told. Stories need to be told.
So what is it about stories that worked for you?
I grew up doing a lot of reading, and I do a lot of writing as well. It's not just music. I write horror fiction, and I read a lot of horror fiction and a lot of poetry. And I think that just the way that horror is often a really maligned genre of fiction in general because of a lot of the time because of the I guess there's a stigma around horror about it being like gory or too bloody, and I think that horror at its heart confronts the basest of human emotions and the human experience, and I just think that I love that, and I love getting it out there and telling those stories. And my song "The Chair" is probably the closest thing to a horror story that I played today anyway. But I have a lot of songs that kind of take their root from horror and from those emotions, grief and fear and anger and hate, and channels it into something constructive. And I think that that's an important just part of being human. So.
Yeah. So your inspirations, you mentioned Slade Cleaves.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about some of the other people who inspired you?
Yeah, for sure. John Prine, Mos Def, Tony Iommi from Black Sabbath, Matt Pike from Sleep and High on Fire. I mentioned I was in a metal band, and a lot of the music that I listen to is still heavy metal, despite how I look. And but when it comes down to it, I mean, you can take inspiration anywhere. I'll get inspiration from writers, Christopher Buellman. You could even go into Sylvia Plath, Octavia E. Butler. There's just so many amazing writers. Ursula K. Le Guin. All of these speculative fiction or horror or science fiction writers just have these insane imaginations and tell these amazing stories. And it's just something that I've always admired. And I think that there's so much inspiration to be had outside of just other musicians and other songwriters or other poets.
So in the poetry genre, I noticed you have a lot of poetic phrasings and so on in your songs. Yeah. Where does that come from? Who are the poets that do that for you?
So if we take Acheron, for example, which I performed, a lot of the basis of that that song in general comes from poetry about Greek history and about myth and legend. I reference Ozymandias by Percy Shelley. I reference The Second Coming by Yeats. I reference Bluebird by Bukowski. And there's a few Ophelia references. There's references to Orpheus and Eurydice. You could even say that the ending of the song, I'm the only driver of my soul, is a reference to Invictus. And yeah, I think that there's just so much in poetry that can be transmitted into song. And I think that a lot of the time it can get bogged down in itself when people use poetry within a song. I think it can end up getting really bogged down and feel like you're just singing a poem. And I always try to go into it instead of directly saying the poem. I think that sometimes it's better to just reference it or pull those allusions and those metaphors from those poems, because I think they're really powerful and they don't necessarily need to be pulled directly.
When did you start reading all the poetry?
Oh God, long time ago. I've been reading longer than I've been writing. So I guess I started really getting into poetry probably when I was in like 5th or 6th grade, if I had to guess. Robert Frost, which I think is one of everyone's first forays into poetry. Shel Silverstein, Robert Frost, and probably Edgar Allan Poe, The Raven. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think that it's a great way to express certain feelings and certain emotions and certain experiences. But I also think that it has its limits to how expressive it can be. And I think that music helps facilitate that and that further expression.
Yeah. So it certainly compresses a lot into a few words.
Yes, yeah.
You managed to do that very well.
Thank you. Yeah, I also managed to compress a lot of words into one line, so.
So your favorite topics, you mentioned a few, death, fear.
Yeah, stories. I like stories, and a lot of times the most compelling stories have those elements to them. A happy, bright, sunshiny day where someone wakes up and is happy and goes about their day, that's not exactly a story. A story has to have a beginning, it has to have a middle, it has to have an end, and there needs to be a conflict. And I think that songs are a great way of getting that across, because you've got the soundtrack right there along with it. So I think that that's, as much as I'd say like, oh, I like to write about this, or I like to write about that, I think that ultimately there isn't anything specific. I just like to write about stories. I like to write stories.
Well, tell us about your writing process.
Yeah, so typically I'll start with a bunch of disjointed lines that I hope will eventually coalesce into a song. And from there, I expand upon the ideas that I've got written down already. And while I'm doing that, I'll think about what the melody will be. I'll think about what chord progression I might use. And I usually try to keep it as simple as possible to start. And I'll sing it in my head as I'm writing it. And sometimes I'll end up with 20 to 30 verses, a few different choruses, a bunch of different bridges. And from there, I'll chop it down, I'll edit it down, and leave only the bare necessities. And I still think I need to edit a little bit more. I think that's one of my biggest problems, but I'll edit down as much as I can. And then from there, I'll finally actually start playing it on the guitar. I'll start simple. And then after I've got everything worked out, all the lyrics worked out, the tone, the melody, I'll then work on adding fills, adding different parts, adding chord changes and bridges. And but yeah, that's basically it. I typically start with the lyrics first, and then I work from there.
Yeah, and you throw in some a cappella here and there.
Yeah, I have my roots in a cappella, so I'm very comfortable doing singing without any accompaniment. And I was in a couple of a cappella groups when I was in high school, and the first time I ever performed on stage was at a talent show in like elementary school, I think, and I did a cappella, and yeah, so I'm very comfortable. I have no problem singing a cappella, and I think that it adds an additional oomph, for lack of a better word, a little bit of a punch.
Yeah, if you want to highlight a feeling or a phrase, it's a great way to do it, and you do it very effectively.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
So the editing is difficult, you say?
Yeah, always. Because I like everything. So for the most part anyway. So if I'm telling a story, it's hard for me to be like, well, no, that doesn't need to be in there. Because in my head, I'm like, well, no, that's part of the story. It has to be in there. But I have people, I have friends, I have family who will help and help me edit it down a little bit and get it a little more short, for lack of a better word. Yeah. No one needs a 12-minute song. There's very few that work. American Pie, and even that is not 12 minutes long.
So yeah, I mean, a lot of people say, and I think rightfully so, the fewer words in a line, the better it is, as long as the information is there. Yeah. And so, but it's tough.
Yeah, it's very hard.
I get that from everyone I talk to.
Yep.
Yeah. So can you give an example of one of the songs you did, how the process worked out? Yeah,
sure. So we can go with, let's go with The Chair, because that one is very much a story song, more so than some of my other stuff. So I started with this idea of a internal monologue of someone on death row waiting to get sent to the chair, sent to the electric chair. Obviously, years and years ago. And this whole internal monologue talking to himself about how he's not guilty, and telling the listener and telling the reader, like, he's not guilty, he didn't do it, but I'm still going to the chair, I'm still going to prison, and I should have, this isn't fair. And And my whole idea was to lull the listener into a false sense of security, thinking like, oh, this is the good guy, this is the good guy. And then right at the end reveal that he's actually very much guilty, and he's just trying to convince you, the listener, that he's not. And so I started working on it. I put it down for a few months, and then I came back to it once October rolled around, because I was like, it's time to write a spooky song. We're getting into Halloween season. And I brought it back out, and I chatted with a couple of my friends and my wife, and tried to figure out exactly which lines I should keep, what I should cut, and what I should add. And my biggest issue was trying to figure out how to do the reveal, right? How to do the, because he's about to die, so it's not like we can say, like, oh, and then I got electrocuted and I died. Because, I mean, I guess I could, but it didn't really feel like that would be the right move. Mm-hmm. And I wanted it much more implied and a little bit less overt that he was guilty. And so I eventually came to the conclusion that I should say, like, what's the harm? You know, he's pleading his case one last time, and he's saying, what's the harm in one more lie? So, yeah, I think that after I got that line, it made it a lot easier to cut out other verses and cut out different parts of the song, because I'd figured it out. I figured out where it ended, and then I could go back and I could cut out some more of the overt like allusions to him being guilty earlier on. And I really only kept 2 or 3. And I think that was the right move, because again, you know, you hear it and it gets to the end and you're like, oh, that's why he said this, that's why he said that. And yeah, I think that that song is a great example of my writing process, just because I started with so many lines.
Really?
Yeah. I cut it down to 6 verses, and it was at 20 at one point. So, wow. Yeah. Yep. So I think that's probably the best example of my writing process, for sure.
Yeah, and then it enables you to pull the rug out from under the listener.
Yes, yeah, which I always appreciate. And I think that's one of the best parts of horror fiction and speculative fiction, is that the rug pull, right? The reveal or the twist, but I kind of hate that term. But the rug pull is a good word to use, is a good phrase to use. I think that much more describes horror fiction typically, and that kind of feeling, just because it's, when you look back at it, you can be like, oh yeah, obviously he's guilty. But in the moment, you're hearing him and he's, you know, pleading with you and begging with you, and you as the listener being like, no, I'm not guilty. Like, you have to believe me. No one else does. You've got to believe me. And you do, until you don't.
Yeah. Well, I experienced whiplash at that point. I definitely did. So, well, that's very helpful. When you think about other songwriters, and you obviously talk to a lot of songwriters, what suggestions do you have for them?
Oh man, I think everyone's writing process is different, so it's really hard to give anyone advice. And I've had friends ask me that before. I've had people ask me that before, and I think the best bit of advice is just keep writing, and if anyone tells you that you suck, screw them. You should just keep going. So everyone's process is different, everyone's writing is different, and everyone has their opinions about everyone else's writing and everyone else's songwriting. So I think that's the only advice I can really truly give. Just keep writing.
Okay. So yeah, well, I don't expect anyone to say that your writing sucks, so, and I wouldn't know why they would. But,
I appreciate that.
Oh, absolutely. So, what else would you like to say to the audience about songwriting or about the things that you're doing?
Yeah, I will. I'm sure have a bunch of gigs coming up. You can find me on Instagram, Billy Moon Tunes. I've got my YouTube on there as well. If you search Billy Moon Tunes or Billy Moon Music on YouTube, you'll find me. and got a bunch of live videos up. I will eventually have some recorded music, should be on Spotify. Just need to get there and finish it. It's always the struggle. And yeah, other than that, come out and see me play, come out and hang out, listen to some tunes, follow me on Instagram, follow me on Facebook. I'm on there as well. So yeah, that's about it.
Great. Well, thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thanks for watching our show. I would like to acknowledge the support of the Western Mass Songwriters Collaborative, promoting the original music scene in Western Massachusetts. If you want to learn more about the WMSC, go to their Facebook page. Thanks for watching. I'm Dr. Dan. I hope you'll tune in again for the show that puts a spotlight on songwriters.